With enforcement ramping up and penalties increasing, the Voluntary Disclosure Program is becoming the safest way to resolve past tax mistakes before they turn into something bigger. To walk through the risks, red flags, and first steps, Federal Drive host Terry Gerton spoke with Valerie Makarewicz and Tino, Lisella, partners at Carlton Fields.
Valerie, I want to start with you. Here at Federal News Network, we have covered a lot about the IRS's staffing challenges, and as we're getting into filing season, how challenging it is going to be for them. But you all are suggesting that now is the time for people to look at the IRS Voluntary Disclosure Program, or VDP. Seems like it would be a time to maybe not think about that. Why is this so important?
Harry, ignoring your obligation to file and pay your tax returns timely is never a good idea. The VDP program that the IRS is proposing can assist taxpayers with past due returns that have yet to be filed or non-compliance in payment and significantly reduce their risk of prosecution.
Tino, for folks who don't know this program very well, what exactly does voluntary disclosure involve and what protections might it provide?
That's a great question. So voluntary disclosure practice is a program in which people who believe they may have a willful violation of the tax code, meaning a voluntary intentional violation, can come in. And if they are not under any sort of investigation or examination, so civilly by the IRS or criminally by the IRS, if nothing is opened on them yet, it allows them to provide certain background information to assist the IRS in determining whether there's something open on them somewhere within the IRS. That's called the pre-clearance process. And assuming they clear that, then there's the next step of providing the IRS more information. And the updates the IRS is proposing to the program streamline it and make it a little bit more predictable for taxpayers.
So you're talking about someone who's willfully not paid their taxes, right? So intentionally, knowingly not filed. Not somebody who maybe just doesn't know that they have to pay taxes or someone who's made a mistake in the past. Valerie, talk me through how waiting might actually expose these folks to harsher penalties.
No one wants to walk through life looking over their shoulder, waiting for the IRS to come knock at their door. I think people inherently want to comply with the tax law and want to do and pay their fair share. So for those who are ignoring this, their knowing and intentional non-compliance with the tax laws, it can subject you not only to harsh penalties, the compounding of interest, but certainly it exposes you to potential prison time.
Tino, would you like to add on?
Sure. And to be clear, Terry, it's actually broader than just the non-payment and the non-filing of tax returns. It could be the filing of false tax returns and other false documents to the IRS. So it is an opportunity if someone, again, if it was willful, if someone willfully filed a false tax return and they want to correct that. So it's more than just the failure to pay and the failure to file. It's correcting past affirmative misstatements to the IRS as well.
Valerie?
Perhaps someone forgot intentionally that they earned some Bitcoin income. That can be included in the VDP program to amend the return, correct it with the IRS, and pay the tax due and owing.
You all have written an article that gives some examples here, and one of them caught my eye. Activities that are legal in states, but perhaps not at the federal level, like marijuana dispensaries. How should someone think about that? Valerie?
Income that is illegal on the federal sense, all income should be reported, regardless of its source. The VDP program, however, is not available to report income that is illegal federally to earn, but legal on the state side.
So it's not an amnesty program?
Definitely not. It will reduce and be a factor in what the IRS thinks about your case in determining whether or not to bring criminal tax charges. But it is not an amnesty program. This is not your ability to get out of jail entirely, but it can significantly reduce your criminal exposure.
I'm speaking with Valerie Makarewicz and Tino Lisella, who are partners at Carlton Fields. Tino, let me come back to you. As we think about staffing challenges at the IRS, what are you seeing in how the IRS is shifting its enforcement posture here? Do they have enough in-house investigative capacity to go after these cases, or are they partnering with other organizations?
I think that there's both happening. I think that it would be foolish to think that a reduced staff necessarily means reduced enforcement. The IRS, I'm sure, would always like more resources, both on the criminal side and the civil side. And the more criminal agents there are, the more criminal cases that could be brought. But I think that they're also doing more with less. I think they're relying more on technology. And yeah, I think that you will see, if people haven't already, probably see more partnerships with other agencies. But I think that the enforcement environment is a healthy one. It's ongoing. And I don't expect that it will slow down. The IRS has been through staffing challenges before, and they always find their way through it and usually become more efficient as a result.
Valerie mentioned a couple of these earlier: third-party reporting, informants and whistleblowers, parallel investigations, data analytics, international information flows. So if someone thinks that they willfully didn't file their taxes, but they're not going to get caught, these are a lot of other ways that information could get to the IRS, right?
That's exactly right. The IRS gets information to open criminal investigations from a number of different sources. You just named several, Terry. So that's right. There's no, people shouldn't feel safe because they say, oh, well, what's the likelihood that I'm going to get caught? Because, as Valerie pointed out, it could be a subpoena that was initially not even related to the taxpayer, but somehow their information is caught up in it. And then there's an indicia of noncompliance. And so that now all of a sudden brings that person into focus. And again, once they're in focus, they're not eligible for participation in this program. So that's why, if there is a problem, like Valerie said, people don't want to look over their shoulders their entire lives. And the statute of limitations in tax cases is a long one. And so the time for people to get compliant is sooner than later.
Valerie, let me come back to you and ask, what might coming into compliance entail for an individual tax filer in this case?
Sure. There are a few requirements that the VDP program has to make sure you qualify and that you disclose all relevant information to the IRS. First, there's about a 6-year look back period. So if you've not paid or underpaid your tax or underreported your tax, you're going to need to provide the past 6 years of tax returns. You also, if you're selected for the VDP program, you're going to need to file that very quickly. Though the IRS is requesting about 3 months from the conditional acceptance into the program for a taxpayer to act quickly and file required returns and pay the required tax, penalties, and interest. And then there are some predictability measures in place for the penalty structure and what will be required of a taxpayer to not only pay the tax that they owe, but applicable penalties plus interest to become fully compliant.
And Tino, you mentioned earlier that the IRS is considering some changes to the VDP program. What are those right now, and what do people need to know about them?
Right. So as Valerie talked about, the way that the program currently exists, someone gets pre-cleared and then they provide certain information as requested by the form, and then it's assigned to an examiner. So they sort of wait. This new program really puts more of the onus on the taxpayer themselves, but which also though creates sort of more of a defined timeline. So once they're cleared, they have, as Valerie said, they have 3 months to file 6 years worth of either tax returns if they were a non-filer, or amended returns if they were a filer and those returns were false, and either full pay or agree with IRS as to a full pay payment plan. So it looks like what the IRS is trying to do is really make this more predictable in terms of a timeline and much more efficient. So instead of waiting for an examiner to come and examine the returns and do this full-scale audit, the onus is now on the taxpayer. File accurate returns, whether original or amended, and you pay or get a payment plan that's acceptable to the IRS.
So, Tino, what's your parting words of advice for tax filers?
Always be compliant currently. Whatever you've done in the past, one of the things our article says is stop the bleeding. It's never too late to become compliant. And then if you've had past compliance issues, now is the time to consider the voluntary disclosure practice to correct those past problems as well, and hopefully try to avoid prosecution.
And Valerie?
Do the right thing. Our nation runs on a voluntary compliance system, and we count on our neighbors to contribute their fair share to the government. Do the right thing, come into compliance, fix your past willful mistakes, and get right with the IRS.
Valerie Makarewicz and Tino Lisella are shareholders at Carlton Fields. We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.